Hello and welcome back to this second half of the day. This is Alex Luna, your host, and Juan Carlos, if you want to introduce yourself, and let's move on.
Juan Carlos Luna, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you again in this second part of the day with great presentations. I'm sure you will all be delighted with the content and the level of speakers that we have with you. We always had these slides, and by the way, hope you like the Zen Minute. We'll do that in the afternoon sessions or midday sessions. And also this word of wisdom. I don't know, Alex, we'll probably need to ask Joe and Jay about this quote, but you know, we always put something to reflect before we get into the topic. And we also add this legal tech fact just to show a little bit of what's going on in the artificial intelligence industry, and just showing some numbers of probably one of the reasons that we're here today, because of the impact and the growth that it has been having lately.
And this is a very real and interesting fact. 58% of British men can use a washing machine properly because they find the household appliance confusing. And strangely enough, we live in an age of self-driving cars, but yet more than half of the men don't know how to use the washing machine.
That probably applies to every country. I don't know about what you think, but
we're here because the legal technology ecosystem is rapidly expanding with thousands of new cloud applications coming to the market. And now some of these guys are our sponsors. We are very grateful for all of them and their support. We have iManage, Logistic, Net Documents, Hogan Lovells, Esija, Genius Soft, Deloitte Legal, Thomson Reuters, and Lexsoft Systems. Thank you very much for their support. And as we have been showing you, we have a very balanced agenda. Today's day number 1. We already had Dan and Ralph, and now we're going to be continuing with our next speakers. And just to go really quick, Juan, if you want to introduce them, please.
Yes, it's a pleasure to have Jay She's a strategy executive, insight and analyst, and business designer for fast-changing legal markets with over a decade of industry experience. She's the founder and executive director of Six Partners, an insight firm for the legal vertical. After a progression of high-impact roles in client service innovation and strategic growth at Safe Art Show, Jay served as the director of pricing strategy for Baker & McKenzie worldwide. And she's also a contributing author of To Legal Evolution, American Lawyer, and other international publications covering the legal industry.
And Joe is the co-founder of LexFusion, working at the intersection of law, technology, and business. His career focuses on technology and innovation in the legal industry. As columnist for Above the Law and advisory board member of For Penn Law's Future of the Legal Profession Initiative, he works to improve visibility, investment, and most importantly, knowledge in the legal innovation. He's an active equity investor and advisor to legal tech companies. And with no further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we have them.
Welcome, guys. Great to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much. Thrilled to be here.
All right, so all yours. I don't know if you want to share your screen.
Or talk, or whatever you want to do. We'll see you. We're going to get off our screens, and then the show is all yours.
Awesome. Well, first, I'd love to thank Alex and Juan Carlos for this unbelievable event. The production values in that interim were above and beyond already. The trickling brooks almost put me to sleep, but then I was brought back up. We're going to have a lot of fun today. I'm Joe Borstein, one of your hosts, alongside Jay. And I'm going to be giving the perspective of vendors and builders in AI and the law. And that perspective is essentially the perspective of those people building and selling into law firms and corporate counsel. I think I'm on good authority to be able to talk about this. I represent 11 legal innovation companies, many of which we're going to talk about today, that are all using some form of AI to move agendas forward. And Jay is going to be taking the perspective of the law firms and the corporate counsel and talking to us a lot about the economics. She has done an unbelievable amount of analysis on economics in the legal world, and she will be able to put in perspective how these trends and how AI will actually impact the lives of you, the listeners, and the next generation of lawyers. So Jay and I prepped a lot for this about what topics we're going to say, but I don't know how we're going to talk about them. So we may disagree. That's going to be amazing for all of you as you watch me get creamed in debate by Jay on live TV. So let's talk about AI and the law. We are Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens means man the wise. So generally, we find this whole idea of an artificial intelligence pretty darn humiliating. Thinking bit is our thing. That's the human thing. Then it gets worse for us lawyers. Intelligence is our only thing. We put down the spears to battle with our minds. We think for a living in 6-minute increments. Not only that, but basically any other thing that we do has been carved out by the definition of the practice of law by our regulatory bodies. For example, we're no longer practicing law when we hover over the copy machine copying documents. Even training many of our attorneys to many clients is not the practice of law and is not something that can be billed for. Even research, things like that have been carved out from the domain of the practice of law. So what are we left with? As a profession, we make incredibly complex, legally influenced decisions based on uncertain and often inconsistent information. So if and when computers can do all of that, and here's a preview, not yet. We're in a lot of trouble. We all agree. But a lot of the spotlight is on the trouble, and we're going to talk about a lot of the good stuff. But today is about the future of legal, not just artificial intelligence. And I hope to convince you why the trends we're going to talk about today are inextricably intertwined, and you cannot talk about AI without these other trends. So we're going to talk about 4, of which AI is part of one, as Jay and I take a deeper dive. So let's go through this. There's 4 tectonic forces bubbling under the surface of the $800+ billion legal industry. First, globalization. That hit us first before AI. Globalization has allowed lawyers and other professionals from all over the globe to collaborate seamlessly at this point, as we know, as we are all over the world talking through amazing technology, to collaborate seamlessly on legal work, often at lower costs, but at the same time increasing the complexity of delivering legal advice. Next, technology, of which AI is a part. We know technology is daily automating the routine processes of today, but it's also relentlessly crawling up the value chain in every area of the law, from front office legal work, in litigation, in M&A, in compliance, to also the back office and run the company, run the law firm activities like e-billing and like timekeeping. Amazing things in AI going on there. Third, really important, the status quo of legal regulation is being questioned and changed, allowing professionals outside of the bar to work right alongside lawyers to solve legal problems at scale, and also, and very importantly, enjoy the profits of traditional legal work. Us in the US, we always think we're advanced. We're not, especially in this regulatory area where most of the world has allowed non-lawyers to sit right alongside lawyers and create businesses together that solve legal problems at scale. But we are dabbling here in the US, and that's really important. And it leads us to the last piece, which is outside investment. Money talks and bullshit walks. I'm sorry saying bullshit. My mom would be mad at me, but it's important. Without money, these things will not move quickly. We see money pouring in from all corners of the globe, from sophisticated VCs and private equity funds to traditional professionals that had been in the AI space before exclusively. This is huge. We're going to talk about the fact that in just the last 6 months, we've seen 5 legal companies become unicorns. Where there is money will flow talent. If regulation is changed and that talent can share in the profits, we're going to see the best talent in the world work right alongside the best lawyers in the world to build unbelievable things. So future, as Peter Diamandis likes to say, if you want to make $1 billion, figure out how to help 1 billion people. I love that as applied to the law, because the law affects each and every single solitary person on the planet. And there's so many people to help, and there's so much money to make. So let's start. AI, what is it? Who's building it? What will the impacts on lawyers' lives? Should it impact educational law? And what will its impact be on the economics of the legal practice? Let's start there. Jay, can you throw up your beautiful, brilliant slides, which Jay made on her own without my help, and talk us through a little bit about macroeconomics and the demand for legal?
Sure. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if this artificial intelligence wants to cooperate. So I absolutely agree with the high-level themes that Joe has outlined, but I am here to give you data, just a few data points, and to talk to you a little bit about, how do we actually get to the future? What does legal business feel like today, and how do we get from here to there? And in order to kind of steward the continuing evolution of the industry, I think we have to have a lot of empathy for what that business feels like to its current participants now. And I am here to tell you from the viewpoint of both clients and law firms and service providers all across the industry, the law business is tougher than it used to be. If it feels more difficult and more confusing, more overwhelming, that's because it is. And a few data points to kind of back up a lot of the themes that Joe already highlighted. So 12 billion of legal spend moved in-house during the 2010s. So over that decade, about 12 billion. And just to give a little bit of size and scale, yes, $800 billion industry globally, but then, the collective revenues of the AmLaw 100 are about 110 billion. So 12 billion moving in-house from traditional law firm outside counsel legal spend. That's a big deal. And that hint at how much the shifts that we're seeing in the industry are structural, right? This hints at corporate buyers trying to do things differently, trying to reimagine the supply chain, and to make sure that the right work is going to the right people and being done the right way. So keep that in mind. 3%, less than 3% of global legal spend by corporates is now considered bet the company. So I would say about 3% of the current legal market is truly price protected and kind of fits the archetype that we all have in our minds for the kind of work that has to go to artisan human experts, right? Where price is no object and you have the flight to quality. And then so keeping that in mind, when you take those two figures together, 12 billion moving in-house and a smaller slice of the pie being truly price protected, this of course feels threatening to the incumbent providers. But then let's look at the bright side, right? Because it's not about crying for the good old days that are not coming back. It's about looking forward into the future. And this is going to bring a smile, bigger smile to Joe Borstein's face. Current estimated size of the ALSP market is 15 billion. Now, I will tell you that at the outset of the last Great Recession, the LPO market was pegged around 500 million. So that's immense growth in a span of 12, 13 years, right? That's the kind of growth we can't imagine in the broader legal industry overall, it being such a mature industry, but that subsegment is growing faster than anything else in the industry. So I give you these three numbers to tell you that, yes, there is significant material transformative change going on in our industry. And to many of the people who work in that industry today, it feels bad. 2020 was, I would say, an unprecedented year, very unpredictable, not conducive to anticipation. And I have to say that incumbent providers did pull out all the stops. They did save the year from dire expectations, exceeded expectations. But what you see here is that the economic pressure on legal practice is very unevenly distributed. There's a lot of data here. I'm sure the slides will be available for closer review later. So I'm just going to pull out the highlights. So when we talk about the legal industry as a monolithic whole, we lose a lot of fidelity and meaning in how we're thinking about the industry, because the way that price pressures, the way that opportunities for automation, for process excellence, and for tech enablement, it really varies practice by practice. And you can see some of that manifest itself not only in fluctuations in demand for outside counsel services, but also in the price pressure that is also very unevenly distributed across practices. And then so I think that, this can all kind of feed into a negative narrative about, the death of lawyers, right? That was a famous Susskind book from way back in the day. I think Joe and I have a slightly different viewpoint about what's to come. Yes, the good old days are gone, but the days that are coming can be great as well. And this is a conversation that I'm seeing across industries, across verticals, is not just limited to legal. Every industry is facing, unique opportunities. Yes, vast threats and challenges, but also immense opportunities to reimagine and rethink how business, work, and life are going to really look like in the future. Part of that, a huge driving force, is artificial intelligence. And to tie back to one of the quotes that kicked off this session, I would absolutely agree. Artificial intelligence does have the capacity to exceed the impact of electricity. It really does, because it's changing the way that humans interact with each other in every context, right? So in this great reset, in this opportunity to reshape how we think and talk and work in the legal industry, I think it's so important to stay mindful of the economic context around us, right? Because the impact of technology, the impact of globalization, you see those impacts play out in the industries and verticals that are being served by the corporate segment of the legal market. This represents essentially the client base of the enterprise law segment, right? And we see economic fluctuations hit each sector and vertical very differently. And then so that adds yet another substrate of complexity and fragmentation to our industry, which is what makes it so difficult for us to see what the future might hold for legal. So that's just some broad context around the legal industry. But Joe and I are here to talk to you a little bit more granularly about what does this mean for the players within legal. And here, again, a very, very complex slide, lots of information. I invite you to look at it later. But really what we've done here is split out the market into 4 participant groups across the top: corporate clients, incumbent law firms, ALSP, and Big Four invaders, right? So these are new entrants to the space, and then legal tech. And then down top to bottom, you see some big trends that map to a lot of what Joe was talking about: the new austerity, the budget pressure to do more with less on everybody, right? And the need for legal executives in every context to build a business case. One thing that Joe and I share that's an unpopular opinion is that we don't believe demand for legal services is going down. In fact, we believe it's exploding. There's more than enough work to go around. In fact, there's more work that then can be done using traditional methods and protocols, right? But the economics aren't keeping pace with that. There's fixed budget and more work than ever. And then so what is really the answer to all this? And the last point I want to make here is that really all the efforts of these disparate groups are interconnected, because what clients decide to do with their budget and their supply chain directly affects the economic context around incumbent providers, new entrants, as well as the legal tech vendors that are there to actually enable and supercharge everything that legal teams are doing. So that's the general landscape context. I'm going to pause here and actually ask Joe to weigh in a little bit about ALSPs and Big Four and how that trend, the broader trend in the industry, actually has a direct impact on the overall industry's ability to adopt and actually drive greater uptake of AI technologies in general.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take a half step back and talk about, Jay, you mentioned that we both have an optimism for the future of the legal industry broadly defined. I want to first touch on that and then get to some real examples with the growth in the Big Four, legal tech, and obviously AI. So it is very easy to look at things like AI, as we talked about in the opening, and process how work that was once done by human brains can now be done by offshore talent or AI or some combination of the two. It's not always as obvious where it can massively grow the pie. And I just wanted to unlock the creative juices by giving you just some of the simplest examples in the world, because I think it helps. Small companies, let's say a small pharmaceutical company, it believes that they were wronged by a big pharmaceutical company. They believe that the cost of representation makes bringing of a lawsuit not worth it. Like the costs outweigh the potential benefit in an expected payout calculus. Now bring in artificial intelligence, bring in litigation predictive coding, bring in global services, which reduce the cost of the most expensive part of litigation, the fact-finding portion, by 10, 20, sometimes 30x. It can bring it down. I mean, we saw that just in the last decade, where doc review went from multiple dollars a document to now often 30, 40, 50 cents or a dollar a document, just collapsing the price of one of the phases. Guess what? More of those cases are brought, meritorious cases. And for every case that is brought by a small pharmaceutical company that is meritorious, guess what? An AmLaw 10 or AmLaw 100 firm has a massive defense case, probably dozens of them. What we see is through modest cost reductions on work that is not essentially the practice of law. Remember, manipulation of facts has always been something that you could assign paralegals, investigators, out-of-state attorneys to. It was never essentially the practice of law. You can massively grow the pie. Now extrapolate that upon virtually anything. Deal work. The point of due diligence, of course, is to look for time bombs, right? Things that could come back to haunt you. In theory, companies should be doing diligence all the time on prospective acquisitions or divestitures, and sometimes not going forward with it. They don't, because it's ridiculously expensive. If you lower the cost a little bit, in theory, and I believe in practice, you should see not one-to-one increase, and it's all about the elasticity of demand in the amount of total work. Now, have we seen that? I would argue absolutely. So in the 10 years that I worked at Pangea 3, then acquired by Ernst & Young, we grew something like 10x. So did our competitors. The world of alternative legal service providers, again, inextricably intertwined with advanced technology, grew massively. And I can't tell you how many conferences like this I went to where everybody said, outsourcing is going to eat our lunch. Well, guess what? The numbers in the AmLaw, while not dramatically up, rose above inflation. And this year, we're actually up quite a lot. So what that tells me is, while one area of the legal work grew 10x, 20x, 30x, everything else also grew. It unlocked demand.
So let me actually add one very concrete example to that.
Mm-hmm.
So most recently, I was head of global pricing strategy for Baker McKenzie, one of the largest law firms, the most global law firm in the world. I think pricing, cross-border transactions was just such an illuminating experience for me, to get a feel for what clients are asking for and how law firms really need to adapt to respond to that demand. So let's rewind like 10, 15 years. When you take a middle market, so not like a front page Wall Street Journal deal, right? The kind of deals that happen every day. Baker McKenzie closed a deal every single day of the year because of the size and scale of its footprint. So taking that deal activity and you really think about what due diligence meant to clients and lawyers 10, 15 years ago, really you would be expected to closely review 40 to 50 documents during diligence, right? Because that was what was feasible within the time and kind of effort constraints of doing a deal. With the technology that's available now, it is conceivably possible for legal teams to look at every document within the enterprise. And sometimes that is necessary. That is deemed necessary because of other business reasons, right? But the point that I'm trying to draw here is that what technology does is give lawyers, legal experts, and business executives more and different choices than ever. You now get to shape the kind of diligence that you think you need on a deal by deal basis, right? That's what technology is doing. And that's part of the reason that the demand, the total aggregate demand for services, I believe is going up, not down, because we can do more with less. And we are already doing more with less. So I think these are two very concrete examples in big tranches of work, right? Litigation and deals, where we're trying to illustrate for you in concrete terms how the introduction of new technical capabilities actually changes the whole board. It's not a simple lift and shift where you take work that used to be done by humans and you give it to something like, a super smart AI that's going to kill us all. It's a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more painful, and it takes a lot longer, right, for us to figure out how we're going to actually deploy AI technology or even just straight technology to change the way we work. IDEO said technology changes quickly. Human needs evolve much more slowly. And then so I think, bringing those two narratives together is what we're trying to do here today. And then, one of Joe's one of his 4 themes was investment. And then that is an area of research for me. I want to share with you just one slide on the funding trends that I've observed and analyzed over the last few years. This ends at 2018 because 2019, 2020, and 2021 it's going to be an interesting arc. So I will update this in full very soon. And I think there will be an interesting storyline there. But as we're looking back like 10, 15 years to the last downturn and really the evolution of legal technology in that time, I think this chart is really interesting. So a lot of data here. I'm going to talk you through the points of interest. So the green bars are average deal value per year. The blue circles are deal count by year in legal tech investments, in legal tech startups going back to 2009. So one of the reasons this graph is so interesting to me is that when you look at the average deal value, you can see a very distinct sawtooth pattern. Usually when you look at historical data, you see all figures kind of scream upward to the right and just getting linearly bigger. What this suggests is a cyclical trend, right? There's some kind of cyclical trend happening here, but the deal flow has sustained its uptick. So what we see is a banner year in 2012, another banner year in 2015, and another banner year in 2018. And what that suggests to me is that these are years where the industry is funding bumper crops of new companies. And that in the following years, they go through the usual culling because the survival rates for all startups is very, very low, right? But the few of them that do make it to the next round raise bigger rounds. What this tells me is that the rounds in legal tech are getting bigger, which we know. We're going to talk about those 5 unicorns in just a bit. But this really is signaling the advent of a new era in legal, where technology adoption is happening, investment in technology is happening, and the data bears that out. And the result of that is an explosion in options for legal teams everywhere. So this is just a highlight. This is far from comprehensive. I made this map, and
it's still exhausted from putting it together.
Yeah, no, I still have carpal tunnel. I have this file on my computer. It's called carpal tunnel market map. And then so I made this pretty thing for you all just to give you a sense of how the categories themselves are evolving, right? The rapid rate of investment, the rapid rate of experimentation is creating a more diverse environment, and that in itself is in turn is creating a more rapid pace of evolution. Now, a lot of these logos are real technologies that are being used in real legal businesses today, right? They're not just proof of concept. They are annual recurring revenue generating businesses. And then, most of these actually did not exist 15 years ago. I could probably count on two hands the number of logos that were around 15 years ago. And I think this explosion in new tech is both good and bad. It's good because lawyers and legal teams have more options than ever. It's bad because it's confusing. It's a very confusing time to be working in the legal industry. But I think today, Joe and I are trying to make a little bit more sense of what's happening around us. So, Joe, you want to talk a little bit about like the 5 unicorns and what we think that means for lawyers?
Yeah, so obviously a ridiculous number of logos on that chart, but until recently, other than your Thomson Reuters and a handful of others, you weren't talking about companies with multi-billion-dollar valuations. And again, my mom's going to be mad at me, but money talks and bullshit walks. And you can have the greatest ideas in the world and the smartest people in the world, but without the money to fund them, there's only so far that you can go. The last 6 months has been unbelievable for people paying attention. 5 companies from all different walks of life in legal have achieved that unicorn status. Unicorn originally meant private company with a billion plus valuation, and it was a unicorn because it was unusual or nearly impossible. It's obviously neither unusual nor nearly impossible anymore, but still, I think we can agree that $1 billion is a lot of money. Relativity, I think, surprised nobody. In that we're building technology and AI for litigation document review. I like to say, like, technology giveth and technology taketh away. The explosion in data came from technology in the first place. We used to write the occasional memo, and then all of a sudden we were writing 300 memos or mails a day, creating millions and millions of records across even mid-sized enterprises daily. Relativity has done an unbelievable job getting market share. I don't think that was so shocking, but it's still amazing. And then we have Ironclad, we have iCertis, we have NetDocs, we have Clio. For those of you who don't know Clio is a platform for firms, typically on the smaller side, to run their entire law firm. This is a meta-level technology that allows lawyers to function better. Today, I have a lot of friends that have broken off of the AmLaw 50 and started new firms with things like Clio and things like Relativity. They're creating dynamism in the legal economy and allowing people to start up companies faster than ever. Ironclad and iCertis are in the contracts lifecycle management space, something that is unbelievably hot right now. And frankly, at many conferences like this, the only thing anyone could talk about. But you see, there are only 2 out of the 5. And then NetDocs, of course, document management system, trying to wrangle the learning inherent in every law firm in a way that is usable for the future, and also using AI in some really, really creative ways. What this means is that a lot of companies of their size in contract lifecycle management, in DMS, in e-discovery, guess what? They're probably worth well over $1 billion too. And there will be financiers, and they are, because I'm getting calls every day for my advice on what's working and what isn't, rushing to invest in brilliant people doing brilliant things. So again, an incredibly exciting time, and all these concepts are inextricably intertwined. Should we get on to Terminator 2, Jay?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, let's get on to Terminator 2.
I think you gave a really great overview of how the money is flowing across the legal tech landscape, right? If you look at Clio, for example, that really has to do with the overall functioning and operational excellence of smaller practices, of entire legal businesses. When you look at something like ironclad, right? That's contract tech that's really targeted mainly for the corporate segment, not necessarily for the incumbent service providers. And when you look at relativity, that really gets at the disaggregation of services that used to be bundled and go straight to outside counsel. So the money is going everywhere, but artificial intelligence is a hugely important component. And then so I think a little sidebar to talk about what AI is and isn't. So here we have a very scary slide, lots of red eyes, like so much evil. So Joe, what is artificial intelligence?
Okay, so there's a great phrase about artificial intelligence, which is that it is everything that computers cannot do yet, because we redefine it all the time to be the next step. This is the book that I've been using as my Bible on artificial intelligence. I do think it's like the standard, and you can read all those many thousand pages, or you can come to grips with the fact that it is incredibly ill-defined terminology that implies things like what humans do. So that can be anything from concepts like a decision tree, basically ordering operations and ordering information, which is much of what we do as a lawyer, to things that are much more black box, which is an algorithm that finds patterns that we can't necessarily understand, but that gets to results that we can understand. Right, so it replicates patterns that it sees in human work over and over and over again.
Yeah, so I think, in terms of better understanding the term, it's not the words that are important, because AI in the sci-fi context has so many negative connotations about how it's going to become smarter than us, right? When really the reality of actual AI is it's already at work all around us, right? And it's actually a lot of applications are not very smart. Siri and autocorrect are great examples. Now we have predictive helpers all around us in Gmail, in Microsoft Outlook, and in Office 365 in the cloud. Computers are always trying to guess at what would be helpful to us, right? And if you own a personal device, it's 2021, everybody in the audience does, it's not always very good. And then so this is a famous picture of me and Joe Borstein, actually our collective favorite picture of the two of us. We are # not impressed, right? And then so there's a huge divergence in the vague generalized fear of super smart, strong general AI, and then a continuing kind of lackluster reception of narrow applications of AI, right? So where is the truth? In legal, it's something in the middle. And the 5 areas that we think are worth watching for everyone who's invested in the future of the industry are these 5 areas. So dispute tech, Joe gave you a lot of background on the evolution of relativity and e-discovery, but really I think where we see the locus of innovation activity really happening right now is in document tech. So document drafting and analysis, right? These are component technologies that have the potential to actually evolve and into use cases across practice areas, across use cases, and across user groups. And then so I think that you see a lot of exciting advancements in the tooling happening in the extraction, processing, and abstraction of information, unstructured information that's been trapped in documents for all this time. And the reason that I really highlight doc tech as a key area of interest for legal tech is this is an area where lawyers actually have the opportunity to lead. Law is a field that has some of the stickiest challenges with unstructured information, like across all verticals. And we have a lot of, I think, tech envy for other industries. I hear a lot of kind of self-loathing from the legal industry and from legal innovators that we're always 10, 15 years behind the times. And you know what? In document tech, that's just not true. The edge cases, the most difficult cases, the most thorniest, wicked problems in document tech are in legal. And so I think this is an area where we have the opportunity to make huge leapfrog advances. And you see some of the biggest unicorn companies really applying themselves to that challenge. And then a lot of the applications that we see that are of immense interest, of course, disputes and deal tech, right? Where historically huge chunks of legal spend have gone to those 2 areas. but contracts, I think, is the last K-Tech. K shorthand for contracts. So contract tech, I think, is a key area to watch, because that is I think the application of legal tech that has the biggest size of the prize for corporate buyers. Because guess what? Every business in the world has contracts. And as Joe was talking about the data explosion, the potential to aggregate and collect and extract insights from the body of contracts that really document, the commercial activity of a firm is really immense. And that has the opportunity to completely change the game for how companies actually transact business with each other and with their customers and their suppliers. And then so I think these are 4 key areas where you're going to see more and more application of artificial intelligence. Just don't be surprised if it's called something else, like NLP or TAR or predictive coding or, machine learning. You're going to hear a lot of different terms. Basically, it is about getting better tools in the hands of human experts to superpower teams, right? We're talking about kind of bionic teams. We're not talking about kind of the evil standalone AI that's going to take over everything and then like make people irrelevant. For the foreseeable future, it is going to be a team sport, and that team is going to include computers, which is why low code, I think, is going to be an area of increasing interest for me. That's really the area where lawyers that have a vested interest in technology, have a motivation and drive to expand their skill sets, have the ability to actually take technology as well as the expertise they have and to create new ways of working. So, Joe?
No, I was going to say, and to productize knowledge that they're already putting together. So, I think anyone who unfortunately on the phone practiced in a big law firm has had the experience of doing things like 50 state or global surveys. What a lot of firms are doing, and I'm working with one now that is doing this, is, sorry about that, that was my buzzer, is taking global research and breaking it up into its component parts, coding it in a no-code or low-code system, basically a glorified decision tree, not unlike when you TurboTax or other things where you click through, and basically solving an area of the law in perpetuity. Now, when there are changes, all a lawyer has to do is recode those few changes. And someone else, maybe it's another law firm, maybe it's a client, can use that knowledge forever. If you want to talk about threatening the current status quo, that is very low technology, but it is in theory very threatening to a business that does rely a lot on doing this, the same types of things over and over. Every law firm in the world right now is researching things like data breach and trying to understand what fact patterns equal a data breach. Well, guess what? One big firm I'm working with is working with only associates that feel comfortable in low-code, no-code platforms to make sure that all research that they do is kept for their clients and themselves in perpetuity. That is both threatening and incredibly exciting for the people that get there first. And guess what? There's so many areas of the law like that where AI in the form of decision trees and expert systems can really change the game. Again, not scary. There's nothing scary about the technology, but used correctly, sometimes it's the least scary things that are the most disruptive. So yeah.
Absolutely. And one last point I want to make before we go into questions is that, when we talk about AI, I want to make sure we're not talking about it in a vacuum. Because, everybody will kind of know the leading companies in each of these categories. Relativity's been around forever. Kira got a lot of press and made tons of headway in actually applying AI to M&A due diligence. Ironclad caught headlines for their impressive funding and recruiting performance. But really, I do think that it's important to recognize all the other components, right? The process components, the workflow components that go into making software that actually works. And then so when you see development in each of these categories, just remember that workflow is really important. That's actually what makes workflow or AI apps actually work for real teams that have to collaborate, right? And then in terms of like traditional categories like research or drafting, there's a lot of work going on right now to integrate, different aspects of the attorney desktop and to actually streamline the overall ecosystem in how that tech even gets procured and put in front of the lawyers. So there's disruptive innovation happening in every corner of the industry right now. I think that, companies like Legalmation, companies like Copars, like even older companies that have been around a long time, like Litera, or DMS companies, these are categories that we used to think of as very boring and old and staid, right? But it's not true. All of them are really rethinking how we create a better work context around expert practitioners to make it easier and better and faster for them to discharge their work. So I think on that optimistic note,
just before we hand it over for questions, I want to stack a couple quotes for people to think about. We talked about want to make $1 billion, figure out how to help 1 billion people. There's also a famous Francis Bacon quote where he said, laws are made, paraphrasing, laws are made to guard the rights of people, not to feed the lawyers. I want everybody to keep that in mind. First of all, you're a lawyer, so note the dichotomy. That's a false choice there. You can do both. But all of our law schools, trained us how to use the law to benefit the public good. And I think we spend a little bit too much time worrying about how it's going to impact our own economic model, and not enough time thinking about how advancements will do basic things like lower the cost of representation and get people better, higher quality representation from low income, no income, up through the biggest corporations, who are also very important. So I think there should be a little bit more optimism in this field. And now we can go into prediction time.
Prediction time. So what's your most controversial prediction?
Well, you said it before, I'll say it again. The pie is going to grow. The legal industry, broadly defined, being law firms, ALSPs, in-house counsel, and technology and AI, will grow because there is more demand. There's latent demand. There's more things people want to do, not less.
Yeah, my most unpopular, most controversial prediction is that the billable hour is not going anywhere.
I agree with that.
Billable hour will be around forever, and there's nothing wrong with that. So to give a little context around that, I think it is a little bit of a mental shortcut for us to blame the economic models for the pace of change in the industry. Certainly incentives matter, team incentives matter, but I think we are often conflating billable hour as a pricing model and the billable hour time and materials as a business model. We already see the business models evolving. There are more and different business models in the legal industry than ever. There are more and different pricing models available to buyers and sellers than ever before. But that doesn't mean we have to eradicate the billable hour. I think there is always a proper time and place for that. So that's my most unpopular prediction. As far as legal tech goes, hey, Joe, what do you think about this idea that legal tech spend is going to outpace, services spend for corporate legal budgets? What do you think about that?
So I think it should. I also think that legal tech spend for law firms should be going way, 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 way up. I think they need to be willing to try and fail. They're going to bring on technology that doesn't work. But I think the reluctance, and I see it, again, I represent 11 companies. I see it all the time. The reluctance to try something that costs 50 grand, 100 grand, 150,000 with the impacts that, even though sometimes they're wrong, the technology companies believe they can make, is ludicrous. It doesn't pass the sniff test, where large firms will bring on a new associate that costs them $250,000 all in, maybe $3 in the first year without blinking an eye. I think that they're going to have to cycle faster and take a little bit more risk on and try new things, because when the things work, they're going to be unbelievably impactful to the whole practice.
So agree. And then I'll see your prediction and I'll raise you some numbers. I think that in the next 5 to 10 years, the early adopters will do it faster, but law firms need to think about, growing their tech spend by like 3 to 5x. I'm not talking about 20, 30%. It's going to be triple to quintuple what they're spending now. I think law departments, it's going to be 10x. So I think I see explosive growth in legal tech spend from all players.
I agree. And also back to our globalization point, even the globalization piece has barely scratched the surface. The bar associations have made it very clear what you can and cannot do offshore. And for a lot of administrative functions, quasi-legal functions, fact-finding functions. There's a whole world out there that the whole rest of every other industry now feels very comfortable sharing work with. And the law firms and corporate counsel should get more comfortable with it. And if that's what it takes to free up budget to try new technologies. And again, I'm acknowledging many of them will not work. Many will fail. But that's what every other industry does. And I think that level of expectation is going to fall in the legal industry as well. Should we open it up for questions?
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. And we'll probably, if you can stop sharing your slides, and we'll jump right at the questions. I have two main questions for you to give us your insights. And thanks for all these thoughts and predictions. They're really amazing and very interesting. The question is, what happens and what do you think that small and medium-sized law firms can do to embrace AI, and how can they benefit from it in a very, very practical way? Do
you mind if I kick this one
off?
Go
ahead. Yeah.
First of all, don't be intimidated. Technology is the great equalizer, right? Like, it doesn't cost more for them to buy it on a per person basis than it does, global firms like Skadden or like Kirkland. It can be the biggest equalizer in the world. You can harness knowledge, workflows, and experience from the best lawyers in the world. We're working with one company called Hotshot. Hotshot's not a high technology company. They're using extremely well-produced videos by extremely talented lawyers to train everyone. Like a lot of people have learned during the pandemic, one-to-many learning can be extremely effective. That is a piece of legal technology. That is a piece of innovation. And it is something that is so easy for smaller firms to harness and put them right up there with the biggest firms in the world. So I think don't be afraid of it. Reach out and talk to people. Test the waters. Be willing to be wrong.
Yeah, just one word that I'll add to that, or a theme. David versus Goliath, right? It's exactly what Joe said. David beat Goliath by playing to his strength. So when you go up against giants, yes, technology can be a great equalizer, but there are advantages to being small. You have greater agility, and when you know how to use technology to your advantage, you can take down giants. And so I think it's actually even more important for mid-sized firms and small legal practices to explore the way that they can scale their own inputs using, leading edge technology in the front office, right? So AI tech for how you can actually get through more documents, you can get through more facts, you can get to the answer faster. Those technologies are going to be even more critical for smaller practices than big firms. And then there are more options to help you run a better business. I do think the front office technologies, the practice technologies are going to be more impactful. But like Joe said, don't be intimidated. In fact, it's a huge opportunity for smaller businesses to reset the playing field in the legal vertical.
And I guess that the challenge is that there is a lot of information and a lot of options. What do you do to choose correctly among all those big numbers of the legal tech ecosystem that are popping up the industry? How do you?
I'll kick this off here and then turn it over to you, Joe. So one, it's not about taking an inventory of what exists. It's actually more important to take an inventory of your own needs, right? To better understand your workflows, how you work, what skills and people you have in your own business, and to pinpoint, areas that are bottlenecks or opportunities that you could access if you had more time, right? So once you have your own business strategy in place, then you can go shopping for technology to help you do these jobs to be done. And then in terms of navigating the ever increasing complexity in the legal tech market, there's a lot of content producers working in the industry now. That was not a thing 10, 15 years ago. There's more people like Joe Borstein and myself trying to create, some kind of sense-making content around how to navigate the industry. Joe's entire business is actually about connecting innovation to the businesses that need it, right? And my entire business is about generating insight and disseminating it to a wider market and to make the market more efficient. So there are resources available to you if you go looking. But I really encourage everybody to get a fuller understanding of their current state business and what their needs, opportunities, and threats might be. Joe Borstein.
I think you nailed it. Look, we built a whole business around that, and we felt that we had the knowledge to bring that forward through Lex Fusion, from running one of the world's largest alternative legal service providers and having teams of dozens or even hundreds of people actually working on the leading AI tools. So it's one thing to see a demo; it's another thing to hear a team that stayed up all night for 2 months tell you what they actually felt about relevant technologies. Like, we are so excited to bring that knowledge out to others, and we continue to vet and question. And we do believe, it is a moving target. There is no end state. It's going to be changing forever. And for a lot of people, that's an uncomfortable feeling. I love it. Like, we will be studying this market till the end of our careers. And I think for at least the next 20 years or the foreseeable future, this is going to be complex. But there's so much unlocked value if you can spend a little time and get there first and lean on the right advisors.
Yeah, and then just for a practical takeaway, a couple of resources that I think are really helpful. Bob Ambrogi has been covering legal tech for longer than I even knew that was a thing. So Law Sites is an immensely helpful resource. I think he has great content all the time on emerging legal tech and kind of generally talking to people about how it actually works in the wild, right? So Bob Ambrogi, Law Sites, bookmark it if you haven't been there. Legal Evolution, long form content, edited by Bill Henderson. He's chair for the legal profession at University of Indiana Law School. Great site, long form content, commentary. So I think that's helpful. I think in terms of other trends that are happening, there are aggregators working in the market to make it more efficient for buyers to find solutions they need. So I'm going to have to call out Rain and Court. Full disclosure, I am an advisor. Joe has a relationship with them as well, but Rain and Court is doing amazing things, building out an app store for legal tech. I strongly encourage you to check out the great work that they're doing. Find out more about Lex Fusion and what they're about. They're all over the internet, and you have Joe Borstein right here. But I think there's a lot of things conspiring to help people find the right technologies that they need. And these are new and exciting developments, but I know it can be overwhelming. Just start with what you think would help you the most today. I think it is really important to have that self-orientation and client orientation. What are your clients telling you they want to see from your practice? And then start there, because as Joe said, there is no end state. This is just a journey that we're all going to have to go on together.
Yeah. And look, there's great brands out there in legal for the first time. Like Thomson Reuters, my old employer, you can't, not pay attention to them, but also Clio, also Latera is buying up company after company. I have a relationship with them, full disclosure, but the brands are beginning to matter. You can trust in brands just like we do, again, in every other industry. We don't have to scorch the earth every time we make a decision about legal technology, because if you do, you're going to be frozen in decision, and you're not going to get the amazing advantages of this time that we're all living in.
Excellent. Joe, Jay, again, thank you very much for a great presentation. It's amazing to look at from the perspective of the macroeconomics and what's going on in the legal tech, but also in the new player space. So with that, again, we thank you for being part of this event. We will obviously share the slides that you presented, and I'm sure that we'll have great insights and comments from all the attendees. So thank you again. Alex?
Thanks, Juan Carlos. This was great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to go offline for a few minutes until we can set up the upcoming speakers that are already here waiting. So just don't go anywhere. It's going to be in pause for literally 3 minutes, and we'll continue in no time. Okay? See you very soon.